Get all those beautiful faces.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're excited. This is our third session, and Judy was just telling us she's excited to hear from you about your data. So hope you were able to bring some things today. We will have some breakout rooms. Susan's going to drop some information in the chat for today, some resources. And I did want to remind you that next time our meeting date changed, and it will be on May 1st. All right, and I will pass it over to Judy to get started.
All right. Thanks. How's everybody doing today? Missy, how are you doing? All right, there we go. There's the thumb. Everybody, I know it's tired. It's that time of year. It's crazy, crazy. So appreciate you being here. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into it today. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into the step 2 process, basically really looking at the problem analysis. Really am excited to hear about your hypothesizing or your hypothesis, you know, how the ICEL went, if you were able to do it, because we did that a little bit, and then we'll dig more into the RIOT. So for today, what I had asked you to do is, if you could, complete your step 1 using your own data, and then create your hypotheses for step 2. Just do 1 to 3, identify your why, write your prediction statements, and then if you could and felt comfortable, identify whether it was an instruction, curriculum, environment, or learner issue. So before we dig into anything, I'm going to show you this video. I love this video. It's about problem solving.
The problem appears to be unsolvable. Maybe we could run some computer simulations.
There are too many variables. It would take forever.
We've got to be missing something. Okay, let's start again. The movie is playing here at 7:20, here at 7:40, here at 8:10, and here at 8:45.
All right, these theaters have to be eliminated.
Why? They're state-of-the-art digital projection, 20-channel surround sound.
Yes, but they have no icy machines. Despite my aggressive letter writing campaign, I might add.
What about the multiplex here? The seats are terrific.
They have Twizzlers instead of red vines. No amount of lumbar support can compensate for that.
Well, it's going to take at least an hour to eat, and I don't see a Sheldon-approved restaurant proximate to a Sheldon-approved theater.
We could eat after the movie.
Unacceptable. The delay would result in tomorrow morning's bowel movement occurring at work.
And hang on. There's a 7-Eleven here. We smuggle Slurpees, which are essentially ices, in under our coats after having a pleasant meal either here, or here.
Wow. I don't see how we missed that.
Excuse me, in what universe are Slurpees ices?
That's how we missed it.
Sheldon, would you be prepared on a non-presidential basis to create an emergency ad hoc Slurpee icy equivalency?
Oh, Leonard, you know I can't do that.
Yeah, I guess we only have one option.
Yep, I don't see any way around it.
Bye, Sheldon.
See ya.
They'll do.
They're right, it was the only option.
So there you go. That's our that's our kick up warm up today. Don't you love that? It's all problem solving. Everybody problem solves. I've never watched that series. Have you watched it? Looks like it's a pretty funny. It's a hoot. So, all right, we're going to dig right into this. What I'd love to be able to do is have a couple share outs with folks if you feel comfortable about your step 1 and step 2. So let's just sort of walk through real quick review. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. We've talked about step 1 having 5 elements. You've already done this, so you should, be pretty familiar with it. What do they wanted to do? What are they currently doing? What are they supposed to be at right now? What are their peers doing? And the gap. And so I'm just going to go through this very quickly and wave your hand, or if you want me to slow down a little bit. Step 1, we've talked about superintendent saying graduation rate needs to be up to 92% in a couple of years. So their school leadership team started meeting and deciding where their downfall was. As you recall, they isolated it to coming into 9th grade, and we created all sorts of hypotheses as to why they would be crashing when they came into 9th grade. they also continue to look at their early warning systems that they had for freshmen. So freshmen seem to be the thing that is where they crashed and they never really regained where they were when they came in, even though they started going down in 8th grade. So they looked at their early warning system and they decided to figure 39 or more of their kids have 1 or more Fs. So of all of those, as you recall, they targeted in on Fs for freshmen. And then we found out in here that math was the reason that they had the highest failure rate. Is this ringing a bell? Yeah, okay. So 39% failures. Math intervention also has a bit of a failure rate there. They came up with the goal of increased graduation rate to meet the target. 39% of the freshmen are coming off track due to course failures. Math 1 has the greatest off track. So then we went through their step 1 and walked them through. I didn't need to spend any time going through this, but so they took all of those interesting data and put them into a step 1. Okay. So I guess the question I would have to y'all is, how'd you do in step 1? How do you feel you did in step 1? And is anybody feels like they want to share their step 1 and how they did? Because remember, this is what Happy High School did. Anybody feel like they would like to share a step 1? Or would you feel more comfortable doing it in a breakout?
I don't mind sharing.
Okay, great. So let me just make sure, does she have share out rights? Sharon, or does everybody have rights to share?
I can try. I think Martha had a question.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I missed the first meeting because it wasn't I just didn't know about it yet. And then I missed the second meeting before a family emergency. Is there a way for me to catch up?
Yep, they've recorded all of these. So yes, I'm going to leave it to either Jenny or Deanne or Sharon. Will guide you to where you can find the very entertaining recorded Zoom.
Yes, we'll
I'll
the
put 'em in the
link
chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you for doing that. So Charlene, are you sharing yours?
Yes, can you see it?
Fabulous. Yeah. And then somebody else who said, was it, I can't remember who else said they would do it, but yeah, walk us through it. Great.
This is just for 3rd grade for the state, and I just went and found the state data online. And my concern was that only about 50% of 3rd graders are at or above grade level, according to ELA on SC Ready. So I just pulled that data for the last several years, and we know we had a dip with COVID, but it was a big dip. But on average, it was about 5% growth, other than that exception of that year. So I was thinking in my head, if we want 80%, just because we're going from 53, I figured we want 100 or 95, but I was thinking 80 might be more realistic, but it wouldn't be 80 in 1 year. So if we had 5% growth per year, it would take about 5 years to get to that 80%. More is always better. We would love to go faster, but I figured realistically, based on the trends, that would be about what we would have. And so our goal would be to increase the percentage of students to 80% by spring 2028, and that would be a 5.32 increase per year. So that was
Yeah, and then the gap is, and then you have the gap listed below that. So that's, Charlene had sent it to me ahead of time, and so she and I had been emailing back and forth. It's well done.
Thank you.
It's great. It's a great start. Great start. And so you're looking at a big picture. Some of you may have done one student, some of you may have done your class or your building. So that's really fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Somebody else have one that they would like to share? I'm practicing my wait time. Anyone? Jenny, do you have one?
Okay, so I don't have it electronically. I just did it the old fashioned.
All right, well, so hang on, let me do this and I will put back up the document. So you can talk us through it.
There we go. Okay, and it looks different for some reason on mine. But so I was looking at school-wide data. I just picked a random school and was looking at their school-wide data.
Okay.
So overall, their general data looks pretty good. 76% of their kids meet or exceed an ELA.
Wait. What's the initial concern?
So the initial concern, they had one area, student growth on their school report card that was below average.
Okay.
So one area to work on.
Okay, so using the data, what's their current level of performance on that?
So their current level of performance, percentage of students, hold on, I have a lot of notes here. Let's see. I should have had this completed a little bit better for you here. So 40%, roughly 40% of their students demonstrated the expected growth or progress.
Okay. And what's the benchmark? Then the next question would be using data, what is the benchmark level?
Okay, so so I broke it down into students with disabilities because I was looking at subgroups after that.
Okay.
So the benchmark level, where is that here? The district performance and state performance was at like 56%. We'll say 56%.
Okay. That's where they're supposed to be.
That's the average of the district. So they were
Okay.
below district and below state average.
Okay, then what's the peer performance? Did you do a peer comparison?
Yeah, I actually use the district as the peer comparison, 56%. So the the benchmark we'll say is 50%. The peer comparison was 56%.
Okay. And so the gap is?
Roughly 10% state and 10% peer performance.
And what area are you talking about when you said there was one area on the report card?
It's student growth. So
Okay.
the progress that students demonstrated.
Okay, so what's your goal then?
So the goal would be to increase to at least 50% of students demonstrating the expected growth.
Over what time period?
That's a great question.
Well, I mean, because Charlene, when I first read it, I'm like, oh my God, please don't say it's in a year. And then it's like, it's over 5 years, which is a very doable, growth. So just, you don't have to do it now, but think about it. So if you're doing a goal and you want them to grow by X amount, by when?
I would say in this situation, only because it's specific, they were 1 point away from being rated within the average range. Like they just barely got below average in that one area. So I feel like they could bump up to 50% within a year.
Okay. Well, there you go. Step one. Yeah. Well, yeah. And so then now we're going to get into hypotheses as to why they didn't meet the growth or why we're not. So that takes us, thank you for that. That takes us right into step 2, which is why is the problem occurring? So this is, you're famous at this because we've done hypothesizings for a while. So what are the root causes? And remember, we've always talked about testing your hypothesis and validating it because you don't want to go down the wrong rabbit hole. So if you were to say, just for example, if Jenny would say, well, I think it's happening because kids are absent from school so much and create this whole absenteeism intervention and then find out that we've increased our absenteeism, but the scores haven't grown. We went down the wrong rabbit hole because it really might be around the effectiveness of delivery of instruction. So that's what that means about making sure we have the right one. So again, why isn't it happening? What are the possible reasons? You know that there's two, this is a review from last time, is there's 2 parts to a hypothesis. There is the hypothesis and then the prediction statement. So 39% of the kids are not passing math because they lack basic arithmetic. The prediction statement would be when students are fluent in math facts, then they will pass math 1. Is everybody pretty solid on that one? Pretty groovy? Okay. So we got to the point where we were looking at your hypothesis, or I'm sorry, your ICEL. And I know you've looked at it, you actually used it to work on part of your assignment for today. ICEL. And who remembers the little trick around the L? You can't go to the L until what?
You've tried all the others first.
Yes. So if you go to this L, it says right here, I think maybe you can see it. The learner is who's being taught is the last domain to look at, then that is considered, and it's only addressed and considered if the curriculum and instruction are found to be appropriate and the environment is accommodating, which is really critical to always remind yourself and myself and everybody, because we usually go, it's the learner. And if we do, that's okay. That's just a learned behavior that we will work on shifting as we get, more familiar with the ICEL. So let's just do some practice with the ICEL. How's that? How you feeling about the ICEL? Any questions about it? It's been around forever. Chicago broke this up into 2. So it'd be family, community, classroom, school, and then peers. I think I told you Wake County School District in North Carolina did the variables, made it a group variable and an individual variable, which is really cool. So comments, questions, or concerns about the ICEL?
So I have a question. I'm gonna because when I got to this part, I started thinking, okay, and I'm looking at a random school that I just plucked and looked up their data on.
So you don't have the background of it. Yep.
And there's a lot of questions that a school staff could answer. But when I'm going through, I'm thinking, okay, I have to go through each of these areas and really investigate all of them to determine what a good what a true hypothesis might be. And so so then I started thinking, okay, what other types of data would I need to know, or what other sources of data might I need to answer some of these? And it's almost like you're going back through step 1 again with those new pieces of data.
So awesome, awesome, awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice. So you don't have to go back through it. You're one step ahead of you. When you get to the RIOT part of it, that's when you say, okay, so what data would I want to use to validate whether or not the hypothesis is true or not? So it's all within step 2. You're one step ahead of the ICEL part. You're getting into the RIOT. So let's do one together. And so do you have your ICEL by RIOT handy? Might be a little difficult. If you have it in paper, it's good. If you have it electronically, you can do it. We can try this. So if you can make your ICEL handy, give you a second to pull that up and have that near you. We'll do one together, and then I'm going to put you into breakouts and give you a few minutes to pick any of the other ones and decide ICE or L. So let's look at the first one. Lessons do not emphasize explicit instruction, strategies, content enhancement routines, sufficient feedback, guided instruction or differentiation. So if you were to look at your ICEL based on that hypothesis, the problem's occurring because doesn't emphasize explicit instruction, content enhancement routines, sufficient feedback. Where, based on what you know now, where do you think that would fall? I, C, E, or L? Take a look at your ICEL. And when you find it, let's do, what page you're on, what column you're on, and what bullet point, if you will. So take a minute and look through and see whether you can decide if it's an ICE or L. is there another link to the material for today? I will see. There should be. So the link for today is not working for you? Okay, so people are saying, Sharon and Deanna, that the link isn't working? What?
It's a zipped folder and I tried unzipping it, but it still wouldn't. open.
Okay,
I'll work on
I'll
it,
work on.
guys. Just give me a minute. Yep.
I tried it and it unzipped. I sent it to another email and tried it, so I'm not sure, maybe because it's on my computer.
Okay, so what do you need? You need, if you're looking for the ICEL, if you can go back into the last session, it's in there. Or if Sharon, if somebody wants to put it, download it and it opened. Okay, thank you. And we can also just put it in the chat if that's helpful. And when you think you know what it is, feel free to put it in the chat. Have you had enough time to decide if it's an ICE or L? No. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing lots of I's. Did anybody see it as a C? Okay, Charlene saw it as a C. Anybody see it as something else?
I was
Okay,
torn between I and C.
okay, I and C, yep. So Martha saw it as an E as well.
I can see that with the routines also.
I swapped between E2. All right, excellent. So here's the deal. The ICEL is meant to really create a common language, common understanding. The biggest issue is that everybody comes to consensus, whether it's an ICE or L. So those that saw it as an I, if you could go back into the I, this one, and tell us, where did you find it? Did you find it under domain, under variable, under review? Where on this I did you see it? And how did you come to the I? So text-based evidence is really critical when you're doing this, because otherwise people go, yeah, I think it's an I. So Jacqueline's saying it's under domain. Go ahead, Jacqueline, tell us where. Instructional techniques, presentation style, under domain.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
hang on. To me, it looks like it's under, it talks about instructional techniques under domain. And so some of the things that are listed there appear to be more instructional techniques.
So I'm thinking under the bottom half where it says consider and it says instructional techniques. Yeah, presentation style. Got it. Other people that saw it as one, hello, Lauren Joy. Where else did you see? Okay, clarifying instruction, questioning, feedback technique. Martha, where is that? Where do you see that on that document?
It's all in domain under the things to consider under domain.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got some solid text-based evidence, explicit instruction under variables. Good. So let's take a look at folks that saw it as a C. So Charlene, take us to your C and tell us where you found that. And don't feel like you're on the spot, because if you can't find it where you thought it was, then it's not a big deal. This is like
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Judy. I was just talking. I didn't realize I was on mute. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I had to be the one. I was thinking teaching methods under domain would be one
okay.
One consideration. And then what was the other one that I said?
So like, go
Under,
ahead.
under
ahead.
variables, it says universal behavior expectations.
Okay.
And yeah.
So the one that we're looking at, so yes, lessons do not emphasize explicit instructional strategies, content enhancement. So Martha, help me understand.
I was looking at all of them at once. Never mind.
Oh, look at you, you overachiever, you. So I would say, and then Misi, you said something like you went between all of them in environment, which is environment is a big one. How did you consider environment as being one of those?
Well, under variables, I sort of I was playing between it because I was definitely sold on I, but then I thought about E because of the routines and the rules. And I was sort of thinking management plans too, because it said, can you put it back up? I think it was the second box.
Which one do you want to see?
The example that we went off of.
Yes, ma'am. Let me just scrolling back and forth in here. Ready, go.
No, it wasn't that one. It was the behavior management system. So the system that was in place wasn't implemented with fidelity. So that's
are you talking about this one? Did you do this one?
Oh, which one?
I gotcha. Okay, everybody. I think and it's me, not you. I thought everybody was doing one.
Oh man,
no worries. But
okay.
Guess what?
I'm following now.
Lisa, you're absolutely accurate. Behavior that one is definitely an E. So you got it. Yeah. So that might be a little confusion there. So the first one really falls squarely under I for the most part. And the really rigorous, wonderful, rich thing about this is that you have conversations. And I've done this with folks where they go, oh my God, I thought that was curriculum. It's really instruction. So because we all didn't go to the same teacher prep schools, we all have different perspectives of it. And I guarantee you, when you do this with your own stuff, these are just like snippets. So you don't have that background content knowledge. So let's just do one more together as a group, since we're all in this together. So we already know Misi told us what the behavior management was. Which one do you want to do? Which one do you think? Let's just do the second one. Students have very few opportunities to respond and receive feedback during lessons. ICE or L. And so just be ready to share where you found it, where you think it is. Okay, we have quite a few answers in here. All right, so what do we think? People that saw it as an E. Let's start with the E's. People that saw it as an E, how did you see it as an E? What that is that Martha? Is that you? No, it's Warren. Yeah. And Angela, where did you see it under E? I know it's hard if you're doing it electronically versus having the paper in front of you. Anyone that saw it as an E? Angela,
Did someone say E?
excuse me?
Did someone say E?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I actually could see
Okay.
where somebody's mind would be going with that, because it would kind of speak to the climate of the room, the culture. If the students know that they are not allowed to kind of respond or talk back and forth with the teacher, that kind of sets an environment and a climate that they don't have a voice. So I could see where that could be an argument. I didn't pick it, but I could see where somebody could say that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Missy. That's excellent. Appreciate that. People that saw it as, yeah, and this is where the conversation gets really rich. So people that saw it as an I, why did you see that as an I? And again, students have very few opportunities to respond and receive feedback. And to Missy's point, it could be very much of a climate in the room type of thing. Under I, how did you see it under I? I think Jacqueline said instructional conversations under I.
I actually, under all of the domain bullet points, I was like, I could see all of those being an issue.
Under I?
Yeah, because instructional conversations for sure, the kids don't get the opportunity to have that. Well, not the graphic organizers. Okay, no.
Yeah.
But questioning, feedback technique, cooperative learning. They're not allowed to do this at all.
Yep.
Clear the instruction. You don't even know if it's clear to them.
100%. So with this one, you could, it's really, it falls down into the eyes for all the reasons that Missy was saying. And it doesn't have to fall into one or, it could be everything across that domain. To your point, Missy, can be, it's an I. What I try to do is I make people do text-based evidence because they go, oh, it's an I. No, because then we go back into bad habits. And people go, oh, it's an L. You can't do L until you meet those two. So I'm just going to show you the rest of these. If you want to write these down, the answers down, you can certainly do that. The one that is curriculum is materials are not aligned with standards and instructional sequences are not explicit. That's a C. And then the E is the expectations for performance is low. So if you can just write those down and you can go in and poke through. So I just want to underscore that if you're feeling like, oh my God, this is a slugfest, it is, because it was like the first time you read an IEP and you're like, oh my God, who thought about this document? This gets really, really fast. So if you're leading a team discussion, if people are sort of little itchy about coming to consensus, the ICEL puts everybody in the same plane. You're all having a common language, common understanding, because people will see it all differently. And the power of what you're going to do with those hypotheses is really based on, is it an instructional issue or is it a learner issue? Because you're going to approach those very, very different. Capiche? All right, so talk to me how you're feeling about that. A little bit better, a little bit more practice. Are you like totally confused at a higher, more important level?
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you're coming up with your hypothesis, would you look at some of these descriptors and think, okay, we're not doing this? So maybe kind of think about it backwards a little bit. Come up with a reasoning as for maybe one of these bullets.
I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying. Like look through it and create your hypothesis based on a bullet?
Based on the descriptors of in the ICEL, like if you look at the instruction page, would you come up, maybe develop your hypothesis based on, okay, so our questioning isn't where it needs to be. So if our questioning was to improve, I know it could be much bigger than that, but our questioning and our feedback lacks. That could be one of the reasons why.
Excellent, excellent question. I think my answer that would be the more organic way to do it would be to just say, what do you think? The problem's occurring because, and then just, and again, we'll demonstrate it. You just write it down on a sticky and you say, who saw it as what? And then you come to consensus that way. So I would say the organic way to do it and the cleaner way to do it, because you're the one that's problem solving this, would be say, what do I think the real problem is? Now you may look at some of these and say, I think it's happening because we aren't using good instructional techniques. That could be. So it's a yes and. If you're doing it with the team, it would be organic to just use the stickies and put it down. But I 100% see what you're saying. You could get some really good ideas just from looking at the ICEL, for sure. It's a great question, Melissa. Thank you for asking that. So in the end, it's all about ICE. Get it? ICE, ICE, baby. So it really is instruction, curriculum, environment, and learner is usually not. So I just, all right, I couldn't resist. All right, so we're cool with that, yeah? So once you have what you do, you have your step one done beautifully. You've got the beginning part of your step two, which is your hypotheses and your prediction statements. Everybody has those, right? You did the best you could with that. Okay, awesome. We did this. I'm assuming you already did this. You put your hypotheses down. You ICEL sorted them, ICEL. A lot of eyes on there as well. And remember when we did this with last week, I'm just doing a quick review and then I'm going to get you into the RIOT to show you where they went. They said the difference between expected and current levels of performance in math existed because of excessive absenteeism. And they said that falls under E. So their prediction statement is if, when students, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. This is the second one. Their second hypothesis was failure is happening because, wait, did I do that wrong? No, there's supposed to be the prediction statement here. Oh yeah, it is there. Duh. If students come to school regularly and on time to period one, then their performance in math would be better. Everybody follow that? Okay. When you do your hypotheses, really, really important that your hypotheses are observable, measurable, and if you validate them, you can actually create an intervention for it. Does that make sense? Observable, measurable, and you can create an intervention for it. So you did that for your homework. How'd we do? How'd you do with that? How about, Tara, can I call on you to say, what is your sort of goal and what is one of your hypotheses? Like, what are you going after?
So I just have the goal. And it's to increase our already usage for our fourth graders.
Okay, so I'm gonna make the assumption that it's the participation of your fourth graders on iReady is not where you want it to be.
Correct.
So what might be a hypothesis as to why that's happening?
I think it's probably just lack of time and lack of planning.
Okay, so lack of time, lack of planning. Cool.
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
All right. So Angela, do you have a goal and a hypothesis? Say that again. I can't hear you. Maybe your mic is turned down. Okay. Anybody have one that they want to share? Oh, you don't think your mic is working? I don't think it's working either, Angela. All right. Jenny, do you have one you can share since you shared your step one?
I will. I'll share. I'm kind of making this up as I go along, but I'm going to hypothesize that they're not demonstrating adequate growth because their special education population has low progress. It's the lowest of the subgroups that I analyzed. I know
Okay. So that'll be a fun one to riot because of course we blame it on the special ed kids.
And so my hypothesis, just again, not being super familiar with the school, is a lack of use of CBM and data analysis. So that analyzing our special education students' data, that their progress will increase on CBM.
So did you ICE or L?
That would be,
Oh, don't do it off the top of your head. Don't you dare.
Okay, I'm going to go back and look at that.
Okay. So if you haven't done it, that's what I'm trying to, don't just say, I think it's because that's an old habit. And then we go down the wrong rabbit hole. So this is excellent. Thank you for letting me call on you to do this, and no crime, no foul. We're all busy. So what I would ask you to do is take that form out, even if you have to print it and write on it. Do your step one, create your hypotheses based on why you think it's happening. So Tara's right on. It could be lack of time, could be lack of planning. Planning probably is part of the time issue, right? If you don't plan, you don't find the time. Cool. So if you haven't gotten that all finished, do that. And then you'll be in great shape. Charlene, did you want to share yours or are you good to go?
I'd be happy to. I just didn't want to.
Oh yeah, it's great. No, we're all in this
volunteer every
together.
time.
Pro team. Yeah. You guys
Okay.
are rocking it.
Let's see.
Oh, I have to stop sharing, I think, right?
All right. Let's see.
Oh, that's pretty.
Oh, thank you.
There we go.
Okay. So
Scroll
again,
down.
I wanted to increase students that were meeting at or above on SC Ready in third grade. And again, these are my hypotheses, not the state. So I just wanted
No, it's fine. We're not holding you to it. We're not going to
Okay.
report to your boss. Don't worry.
Okay. So I just thought possibly I've got to move our heads out of the way. Hold on. For an instruction hypotheses, the PD and the norms and the state standards over the last few decades have not been aligned with science of reading. So this instruction has not been on evidence-based practices because that's what, even the state standards were balanced literacy. So that's what we were doing. And so that would be a tier 1 problem. So I was thinking if the PD and the instructional norms and the standards, which this is all coming into fruition now because the standards have been rewritten, the curriculum is going to be new next year. And the PD because this is for third grade. So for the K3 PD in the state, it's been letters, which would be a foundation. So the hope would be that if all of that shifts, then the data will increase because the foundations are strong.
So that's perfect. So that is a great example of what I would like you all to make sure that you tighten up for the next time we're together. So goals not occurring because we haven't had the PD. We've not been using evidence-based. We've been doing da-da-da-da. I'm assuming you looked it up under your ICEL and found text-based evidence to say it squarely is an I.
I'll have to do better with that.
Okay.
I know, I'm just being.
All right. So stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Yep.
All right. Now I'm going to take you. So fantastic work, everybody. Really, really. Now I'm going to show you the next step of this is using the RIOT. All right. So the RIOT is review, interview, observe, and test. Are y'all with me or am I overwhelming you? You're good? Okay. So you always start with R, because if I think it's an absenteeism problem and I look at the absenteeism and I go, oh, it's not a problem. Boom. I didn't validate that one. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of absenteeism because it's not an issue. So it's and or you review and or interview and or observe and or test. You can do them all. You don't have to do, but always start with R. So the right side of your ICEL is the R. It's like, now these are the ways we're going to collect data to validate or invalidate our hypothesis. You following me? Please give me a thumbs down or stick your tongue out if you don't follow that, because, okay, thank you. No tongues, that's good. All right, so here's back to the first one. They said it's happening because we have excessive absenteeism, first period. We already talked about their prediction statement. So what they're going to do is they're going to review the attendance of all the students in Math 1 in all periods, not just period 1. They're going to look at all the attendance. That's their R. Here's what they did. This is their data review. So they looked at average daily attendance across the 4 teachers that teach math, teacher A, B, C, D. Do they have an attendance problem? I don't think so, because they're above 90, 91% of the time. So the good news is they're coming to school. The bad news is they're failing. Whoa. So now they looked at, let's look at course failure by teacher across the teachers A, B, C, D. So do they have an issue here? Okay, so they have pretty good attendance rate. Teacher C is slightly lower in attendance and also slightly lower here. So the research and the rule of thumb is if you have 20% or more of your kids not doing well in something, it's not the kid, it's the instruction or the environment. So 20% or more. So across all of these teachers, they got a ton of kids not doing well, and it's not the O, it's the instruction. So you go back into your little sheet and you can see what they said. They reviewed all of the attendance and they showed that the students are attending at a rate of 95, most of them, 95% or greater. Teacher C had 91. Further analysis shows that some are attending at a lower rate and are not performing any differently from those attending at a higher rate. Do you understand how they came to that? Did they validate their hypothesis that excessive absenteeism is a problem? They did not. It's not the right rabbit hole. Do you see that? I shall do one more with you. How's that?
This helps. I've seen this tool before, but I've never used it in this way.
You haven't seen me do it.
I have not.
Kidding. So here.
The step-by-step is very helpful.
All right. So ask as we go. Here's their second hypothesis. So it's happening because the teachers don't implement effective instructional practices. We know that that falls on I because that was one of the ones that we just did together. When Math 1 teachers use instructional practices and i.e. guided practice, independent practice, checking burner, then the kids will meet better levels of performance. So for this one, they want to do O. They want to go in and observe using their observation walkthrough rubric. They're going to do it 3 times over 3 weeks, making sure they do it at the beginning, middle, and end of a math class. Because we all know what it's nice to have somebody come in the middle of the class and they didn't see your standard, they didn't see your check that you've already done that. So this is what they did. In this particular school, they had a rubric that they used to do walkthroughs. And so if you look at this, the ones down the right of the pie chart are the areas: communicate instructional purpose, explicit instruction, model, guided, all of that stuff. Do you see that? So take a look at that pie chart, and they're looking to see, their observation is what they're looking for is they want to see what's happening across the rubric. What are teachers spending most of the time doing?
Looks like a lot of independent practice.
And what color is that?
Orange.
Orange. 27% of the time that they did observations, they were doing independent practice. What's the other one that they're doing a lot of?
Explicit instruction.
Explicit instruction. So in my mind, I go, I'm talking to you. I do. Now you do. So I'm talking, and then you're doing independent study. There's no checking for understanding. There's no, I do, we do, you do. And 0 is that there's no reflection. There's no integration. They have very little communication around instructional purpose. So what you have is lots of time, talk to, independent. So if you go to their RIOT results here, 27% of the time, instructional time is spent in independent practice, and then 24% in explicit instruction. Did they validate their hypothesis that teachers are not implementing effective instructional strategies? Firmly, yes. All right, hang in there. I'm going to do one more with you. This one, because this is pretty cool. So they said instruction, it's happening because instruction is not maintaining high levels of student engagement. And we know student engagement is huge in schools today. So if teachers engage kids, then they'll perform at respective levels. So they did 3 things. They interviewed kids, both high performing and low performing, which I just want to take the time to show you real quick. And I know we're running short on time. They did an observation. So they used their rubric to go back and say, of those instructional components, which ones are the kids most engaged in? And then they did a survey. They called it a test, but it was a survey. All right. So on the bottom, if you tip your head, you can see those bars are those same components that we just saw on the pie chart. So Jenny, you said 27% of the time is spent in independent practice. So that's the biggest chunk of time in instruction. What's the engagement of students during that time? Anybody?
53%.
Yeah. So the majority of time of the classroom is spent in independent practice. And during that time, only half the time, half the kids are engaged in doing that, which in my mind is like a chaotic classroom. What do you see gains the highest level of student engagement?
Guided practice with
Yeah.
teacher support.
Yeah, I do, we do. Guided practice with teacher modeling, teacher support. Modeled instruction is the second one. 89% of the kids are engaged when somebody's demonstrating what they want to do. And then explicit instruction was the other one. 24% of the time is an explicit instruction, yet 57% of the kids are engaged. Capiche? All right, I know we're going to run over just a tad. I just want to show you the rest of this. Are you okay if we run over by like 5 minutes? If you have to run, you can run. The interview, I'm going to shut my mouth and let you read this. They're high performing and at-risk kids. Look at their responses when they say, what is your class like on the top? What's the first thing both groups say?
Boring.
Yeah, high perform. I love that they did this. High performing and low performing kids. It's boring. Too many worksheets. The third bullet, uncomfortable when you ask the teacher for help, they say you should already know this. This is brilliant. And then the one on the bottom, I'll let you, read it with your favorite adult beverage later. And the one on the bottom is, what would make it better? Look at the difference or the similarities between high and low performing. What do you think? Are there any similarities?
Less teacher talk.
Yep. Okay, Tracy had to jump away. I know that. Yeah, less teacher talk. Oopsie, I didn't mean to do that. More modeling. How about let us use technology? I just thought this was so smart that they did high and low performing, because people go, well, those kids with disabilities are, well, those kids that are struggling learners. All right. This one, I'm just gonna whip you through real quick. They said, the survey they gave to the kids is, how often do you not complete your classroom? Could be worded a little differently. When you don't complete your classwork, it's because. So the top two rows, %54 of those kids do their homework or classwork. When they don't do their classwork, why is it? Because.
They don't understand.
They don't understand. So 54% don't do it, and they don't do it because they don't understand. Then they said, how often do you not complete your homework? So 46%, less than half of the classroom said, I always complete my homework. And says, yeah, but if you don't complete it, why don't you complete it? I don't know how to do it. I do, we do, you do. And then they come to school without their homework done, and we give them an F or we give them a 0. So it's a double whammy when instruction is tough. Does that make sense? So here's their final, I will let you read this and I won't talk. So on the bottom is the RIOT. They interview, observe, test, and those are the results. So just take a minute and look through what they wrote down. Oh, did I screw that up? Sorry. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at it? Where'd it go? Oh my goodness. I don't know if I'm blocking it. So all they did is they recorded what we just walked through. Student interviews, high and low, revealed the same stuff. Observe. The highest amount of engagement is the ones that they don't even do. And then the last one, test survey, reasons why not. So did they validate their hypothesis was it's failing because there's insufficient instruction that is not maintaining high levels of student engagement? Did they validate that? Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. They did. And so now we have 2 rabbit holes that we now can safely go down, because it's not absenteeism. And we now know that it's not engaged. They're not engaging the kids, because we know that. So they've got 2 valid hypotheses. So I just wanted to do this. We're not going to do any more than this today, but I wanted you to see the critical importance of validating your hypothesis, identifying ICEL. And once you just said it's an I, okay, so what data will we do to validate that this is an I? And it's RIOT. How are you doing? Is your brain full or is it sort of making a little bit of sense? Martha, you look like you're good? Okay. So what you're
It's
gonna
just my face.
Oh, so what I'm gonna ask you to do for next time, finish whatever you need to do to finish on steps 1 and 2, wherever you left it. Charlene, it's really clear what you have to do with the rest of yours, yeah? Yeah. So once you have the ICEL figured out, now figure out how you're gonna RIOT. What will you do to RIOT your identified hypotheses? That's all I want you to do. And if you have time, start validating it. Like if you say, I'm going to review absenteeism data, go ahead and do it, see what happens. So at a minimum, have step 2 pretty completed in terms of ICEL and your RIOT. And if you can start to validate, that would be awesome. Questions? You're not going to do step 3 because we didn't get to it today. I didn't think we would get to it today because of this. This is just, step 2 is pretty meaty.
When is that
Yes,
change
Martha.
date again?
Yes, I'm putting it up right here. Yes. And that changes on my end. I have a conflict, the health issue I have to take care of. So May 1st. And again, if something comes up that you can't, we'll have it recorded for you. And my apologies on that. So the next time we come together, we're going to do a quick review of 2, share out a little bit of how that went, talk to each other about your hypotheses, and if you validate, cool. And then we'll do step 3 together because we have 3 more sessions, which is great. So we can do a little bit of 2, get into 3. And you can't really do 3 until you have validated your hypothesis because you can't write a plan until you know which one to do. So that's what we will do when we're together on May 1st. Any questions or feedback or concerns at all? You guys are amazing. I just have to tell you, you're rock stars. Sharon, anything you want to say? There's the feedback in the chat box. Or Susan, I called you Sharon. Susan.
I answered anything, Judy. Yes, please make sure you fill out the evaluation feedback. And when you fill that out, you will get a certificate of attendance for your first certificate renewal. So,
suitable for framing.
yes. And remember, all of these are on our Academic Alliance website as well, all the recordings.
Yeah, and we'll send out a little prompt to remind you what your homework is. I don't think we did it this time, but we will next time. Thank you for staying over 4 minutes. Appreciate it. Keep up the great work, folks. And you have my email. If you want to send me something to look at in between, please do that. Ask questions. That's what I'm here for. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Judy.